Hey there, and welcome to Heritage Home Family Farm. We are so excited to be here. You will just die knowing that this is like our seventh try of recording this very episode.
Seems like, why is it that the more you think you're going to add technology that is going to improve the quality of audio or video, it just makes it worse?
Every time.
And I don't know, I'm still trying to figure out the right systems, but we are dedicated to getting our story and our experiences into your hands so that hopefully it is an encouragement to you.
And I think it's really important to hear a lot of stories, specifically ones that are like ours, or you haven't had the experience that others have had. Also, we're kind of doing things a little more unconventional, something not like traditional in the ways the farming community.
Yeah, and we've talked about that before with just sort of part of our story and then the specific land that we ended up with. But we want to cover four quick topics today
Mm-hmm.
that we think are essential when it comes to getting started. So you've found a vision, you've purchased some land, and now it's time to make it all happen. And where do you start and what is important? But why don't you tell me about what you're drinking there?
Oh, well, on our farm, we do produce, make, and sell our own blends of herbal teas.
Yeah.
And today is our blooming white tea.
Yeah, it is a delicious
Delicious.
combination for sipping hot or cold.
Yep.
So right now it's winter, so it's cold outside, so the tea is hot. But this is a nice floral and fruity tea with just a touch of caffeine if you need a little pick me up, but much less than like coffee or black tea.
Right. It's
Yeah,
a white tea.
yeah. So it's a white tea.
Light, very
Also
light.
has apple and orange marigolds and rose petals. So all natural ingredients and really, really delicious to sip on.
All of our teas, we have done trial runs, not only in our family and with friends and extended family, but also at the farmer's market. And it's a big
Yeah.
hit.
Yeah, huge hit. We've had a privilege to sample a lot of them out, and that one in particular is one that was a hot seller this last year. So you can get it in season or out of season on our website, heritagehomefamilyfarm.com.
Yeah, so we're really excited in future episodes to kind of talk about why we are doing the things that we're passionate about doing and selling on our farm that could aid and help because it is expensive.
Yeah, we always see like new startups or different kind of like stories on the internet, and I know that those things are expensive. And so when somebody goes and they build one of those beautiful gardens with like 2.5 foot tall raised beds and a
Beautiful.
fence around it, like that's some big money. And so I don't know, they're like winning the lottery or got the expendable income, or maybe they have a great area somewhere else on their farm that is producing money
Yep,
that then funds the next upgrade or the next project. And so I'm sure we'll talk about that too at some point.
for sure. Okay, well, let's get into. We have kind of narrowed it down to four and a half.
Yeah, 4.5.
Encouragement when starting your family farm.
Yeah, and the first is really the importance of community. And we've talked about how important it is to understand the zone and the land that you're moving to. But once you are in that location, making connections with people who are local that are doing similar things or have experience is hugely important. They will tell you where the snow blows from, what trees and bushes not to plant. I mean, they'll be nice about it, but you'll be
Man,
telling them
no,
about your dreams, and they'll be like, kind of give you the smile and nod and like the oh bless your heart, you don't know that's gonna die.
I've done that.
Yeah, and I'm sure we both have, and just in our planning and in our um preparing and our production. So that element of community is tremendously important, but there's others too. Like when you are trying to roof something and the neighbor shows up with a roofing gun,
Mhm.
so you don't have to put up, I don't remember, 10 squares of shingles by hand because that's what you were going to do because you're trying to save, $350 on a roofing nailer.
Yeah, and we really value education, and while we were living in our trailer for 18 months, we really put a lot of work into learning different types of things for homesteading
Oh,
and
yeah.
farming and gardening and flowers, all the things. And then when you get to your property or when you start actually taking steps forward on your property, you learn really quickly that that wonderful wisdom really like 10% applies to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. And so much of it has to do with like where you end up actually being.
Mhm.
And then, you know, something that's newer that's been talked about a little bit even is like microclimates.
Yeah.
Like you might think like, oh, I moved to zone 5, it's all the same. But even in our little valley, people will tell you like, oh, what grows in Idaho Falls won't grow in Sugar because
Sugar City, it's north of us.
yeah, it's how many miles though? Not that many
Not that
miles.
many.
30 miles.
Yeah.
40 miles difference in the same valley. Not saying you're not even going over a hill. You're not that much more elevation. You're maybe like 150 feet more
Mhm.
elevation max. Like, but they'll tell you, oh yeah, it'll grow different even in Rigby than it does in Idaho Falls.
So that's where that community piece really plays in.
Yeah.
Talking to the people that live here, looking and walking through their gardens, the neighbor in front of us, beautiful garden, beautiful everything.
So you know it's possible.
You know it's possible. And so you go over to her and you're like, teach me how you do this.
but
And
but
it
she's
makes
been at it
difference.
like 30 years.
Yeah.
And she's somebody that has a compost pile that grows like better squash than you try to grow.
It's true.
But that compost pile is so rich in just great nutrients that your soil is lacking.
Yeah. So community, huge, both in education, both in support,
Oh yeah.
encouragement, friendships. We've talked about this before. At least I think we have, or it's been one of the 7 episodes we've said, and now I forget. But there is a big push for self sufficiency, but really community sufficiency is much more obtainable.
Yeah.
And I really do believe joyful,
Yeah.
like when you can help one another.
Yeah. And especially when you're getting started, there's no
Oh,
way
yeah.
that you can do it all. You might aspire to do it all someday, but I think more than likely what you'll find is that you really enjoy parts of it and other parts of it you're happy to just let somebody else do.
Yeah.
And so that community support or that community independence is where it's at is really being able to barter or trade, or maybe you're willing to go help somebody else out who
Right.
can do something successful on their land that you're not equipped for yet. Those things, they go back and forth, and having an extra set of hands is hugely helpful,
Yeah.
especially when you get into a project over your head or you need just a few days away. Having somebody that you know and trust is super helpful.
Or you have baled all of the alfalfa on your fields and the water is coming in at first thing in the morning and it's like 10 o'clock at night. You call your local goat farmer who
Yeah.
is your friend that you met at that farmer's market and he comes and bails you out. Get it? Bails you
Yeah,
out.
literally bails you out. I think we loaded another 70 bales of hay onto his trailer before the water came that night.
Miracles happen
It's
every
good.
day.
Then he let my kid drive his like $100,000 truck.
Oh, wait, kid, 9-year-old, 9-year-old kid. I'm
I'm
sitting
like,
in here
don't crash it.
watching out the window. I'm like, what are you doing? But that's what community's for, to
Yeah.
build up one another
Yeah.
and to bail out one
Bail
another.
each other out, man.
All right. Number 2 is something that I am very passionate about, the first part. And the second part, Darren's very much a realist and reins me in. But we believe it's really important to dream.
Oh,
Dream big,
Yeah.
have visions, set forth legacy of what you want your homestead to be, even if you don't end up staying at that specific property.
Right.
It is really important in your planning to have that long-term vision.
Right. So you dream big. You're
Yeah.
good at that.
Yep.
And then you prioritize the small steps that need to happen first.
That part is wah, wah, wah. I just want to like snap my fingers like Mary Poppins
And
and
then she's
have
got
it done.
big, beautiful maple trees.
But that just doesn't happen. And speaking of trees, that's the perfect example
Yeah.
for this step. We decided and like envisioned having an orchard that we would, take things from ourselves and can and store and harvest,
Yeah.
and that we would have plenty to give our children and still furthermore to aid the community. Well, that dream is like a 15,
Yeah.
20-year dream because you plant the trees now, but it takes season after season of care and nurturing to make that happen.
Yeah. And you can't plant them 10 years ago
Right? Because you didn't have the property.
unless you had the benefit of buying a property with an established orchard or with an established berry patch.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that benefit, then you are starting from square one, and you got to start from square one on year number one. You have to get at it early. And so that's one of the things we did. And those things take a lot of work up front, but then hopefully you have them in a setup or in a system. We'll talk about that later, where they are producing for you for years and years to come.
Yeah. And as everyone says, when is the best time to plant a tree?
Yeah, 10 years ago.
Yeah. And the second best time is
Today.
So that is an example of dreaming big and yet taking the small steps now.
You also have to dream big, like if you're planting a garden, say, and you think, well, how big can I garden this year? And then you put something else right next to your garden, then you've limited your sequential years where you might want to grow a larger garden. And so when we were drawing out our property to scale, we drew out like, what's the biggest we think we want the orchard? And so while we planted trees, we didn't plant every space, because I think part of it'll be like, what does well, what doesn't go well.
Right.
What other things do we hear our community talking about growing well that we want to add?
But we saved the space.
We saved the space.
And I think that that is important, especially when you have those long-term ideas.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you could, I guess, in a sense, have multiple orchards in different spots all over your property. But the beauty of kind of planning out is that then those systems that we're going to talk about make sense both now
Right.
and long term.
Yeah, and it's the same with your garden, or if you've got chicken runs or pastures or shade trees or yards. Have a plan. Dream your plan of ultimately what you would love your property to look like, and then start building the small steps from there.
Yeah. Okay. Number 3. Do you want to say this one? Because this one's totally unconventional.
3. Start with what works for you and what you're passionate about. So you might think, well, if I'm going to be a homesteader, I have to start by laboring in the kitchen over sourdough, and then maybe we'll get some chickens and then a dairy cow, because that is the correct order. And, a kitchen garden, whatever those things are. Well, I'm here to tell you, do it from what you're passionate about. Do it from what your property is equipped to do, and do it in an area that you maybe have a previous skill or experience in. Get yourself some early wins where you start producing and you're not kind of struggling trying to make something work that isn't your thing.
Yeah, Darren and I have just been talking recently. There's and it's not just us. Other people are talking about this interesting thing that's happened where a lot of people in 2020 desired to have land, desired to have a farm, desired to get out of the city, and they did. They bought it.
And they made it.
They made it. They started doing it. And now 5 years later, the hard work, that maybe the failures, I don't know, they're leaving. They're leaving and returning to the city again.
Yeah.
And it is hard. I mean, a lot of things are hard. Working out is hard.
Yeah. Well,
but
it just takes
when you work out, you are putting those weights on, and that is what builds that muscle,
Right.
right? You would not get the results you wanted if it wasn't challenging and hard.
Yeah.
However, the thing that is important to know in this step and in the next step is that there are things to help you so that you are not just toiling in the dirt, right? Like
Yeah.
there are steps that can help you build success, find those moments.
Yeah. Marry together what you're passionate about, and do it in a way that is going to build a system that works really well.
Right.
And I guess don't feel like you need to do what everybody else is doing. So if you love gardening, then garden well, especially if you live on a piece of property that has great soil.
But even if you don't, if that is your passion, then pursue that. Because
Yeah.
if you think, I want to garden, that's what I love, but I'm going to try a milk goat first, then you might not enjoy it as much until you have the fruits of your labor of that garden in place.
Right.
Your mind will be divided.
Yeah. Yeah. So and go with what your like your natural proclivities or your natural skill set enjoys. I love cutting meat. And so we jumped into meat chickens, way more of them, way sooner than conventional wisdom would say to do. But we
And way
found,
more.
yeah, but we found it to be successful.
Yeah.
And, somebody might look at you and say, wow, I can't imagine processing 75 or 100 chickens in a day. And you say, well, that's a fun day's work.
Yeah. Where like maybe that the person that loves butchering might say, well, I can't imagine weeding for
Right.
2 hours. Like I'd rather, butcher chickens for 8 than weed for 2.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just find your passion. And then we've mentioned this multiple times. So hopefully it's obvious what number 4 is. It goes
Right.
with everything. Hopefully we're just building upon these 4, but it's make systems, build systems for what you are currently doing, or else you will never be able to expand.
Yeah. If all your time is being taken up watering by hand, then you'll never be able to cultivate and expand new garden beds, because just the time that you have, maybe you have unlimited time and we got to talk. But
This
if
is
you
not
are
our
like
job.
us, yeah,
We are bivocational.
yeah, if you're like us, you have limited time, and that time is joyful and it's fun and it's work, but you don't have the time to manicure everything by hand if you're going to also be trying to expand.
Yeah. And the systems that we're talking about are the things and the features that allow you to not only grow and expand what you're currently doing, but also to give you freedom to start other things.
Right.
Because usually, I mean, and I have a couple of examples, but usually when you first start something, it does take a lot of brain power. It takes a lot of learning. It's a learning curve, right? And it takes you time to develop these systems. One example I was thinking of was the orchard.
Right.
Our first year, we were watering every day by hand these trees.
Like 5 gallons of water each on a tree.
And then, every 12 days, we had the flood irrigation come in and deep water them, which was wonderful.
Yeah.
And if I was still having to water by 5-gallon buckets these trees, we would not be getting other things put into our home,
Right.
our homestead, because that took time,
Yeah.
lots of time. But after we put the dedicated time in that first summer and their roots established and got going, we could then have the system of the flood irrigation be what would water them.
Which took big dream planning,
Right.
to put them where they were going to get guaranteed really good water.
Yeah.
So all these elements work together, but that's a great one to show that the choice of the crop and the planning of the place was in itself the system.
Right.
We're planning on planting lavender this year. That's going to take a little more work year 1 and year 2 to make sure that it establishes well. but then it should do very well in a drier area.
Right.
And so, and you can do the same with your garden. If you're watering every day by hand for,
Which we did. Remember that
we
the
did
first year.
that, and that was a lot of time. And by year two, we're like, man, we need a system where you can like turn it on and set a timer and go do something else and
Right.
then walk back 15 minutes later and turn it off.
Mhm.
And then do the next run and the next run instead of spending multiple hours trying to water.
Yeah. And like Taryn says, when you have a system, like, so you turn it on, you can go do something else,
Right.
where doing things without systems cause you the time that you have to invest that is being taken away from something else.
Or you need to be able to check on all of your crops, all your things that you're growing, all your animals. But if you can just do a visual check and not have, 10, 15, 20 minutes of work to do at each stop, then that's hugely beneficial. I think you make better time if you condense your work and once a week you fill the chicken water instead of having to fill the chicken water every day or twice a day.
Right.
And so you develop yourself systems, and sometimes those systems are well thought out, pre-thought out, that you purchase, that somebody's made something that really works well. And sometimes they have to be innovative. Like, you save money by building something yourself and figuring out what's the right way to make something I already have go with something else I already have and make it work for you.
Yeah. And I joked in the beginning that we have 4, maybe 4.5, because I think the half is just an encouragement just to get started.
Yeah.
You can get so sucked in your mind that it paralyzes you from like, oh, well, is it in the right spot? Or, oh, I don't have a system in place, or whatever.
It's like, when's the best time to have kids?
Never.
Never.
And
You're
always.
never ready. You're never ready to have your first kid, so you just got to do it.
Yes. Same with farming.
Yeah.
Just
absolutely the same.
jump, do,
Yeah.
try.
Jump in there and do it. And one of the things that, speaking of time, that is just super important is that in all of what you're doing and all of what you're dreaming in these systems, we want to be framing out time for family, for building that heritage, building that legacy. And around the table is one of the ways that we really, really try to emphasize that. And one of the ways we try to make it easier for you guys. So Marissa's holding our Italian seasoning. Now, this makes homemade with ease. So you can make a delicious homemade meal without sacrificing the quality
Or the taste.
or the taste by going with a pre-packaged sauce.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all the ingredients you need, all natural ingredients, no MSG, no preservatives, no anti-caking agents. We use only sea salt and herbs and spices. It makes delicious tomato sauce. Tell us how.
Okay, so our family literally has pizza, homemade pizza,
yeah.
once a week. And one of the ways that we love using our Italian seasoning is to get a can of either tomatoes we've canned or that we've bought at the store.
But just plain tomatoes.
Plain tomatoes, no flavor,
Yeah.
no nothing. And then add our Italian seasoning to it, blend it up, and put it on the pizza. It's like a boost of flavor. I know what I'm feeding my kids is healthy. And speaking of systems in your homestead, as a homemaker, this is a system.
Yeah.
Having packaged, wholesome, good grab to add depth of flavor to your meal is a system because some of our spice mixes, including this one, have multiple, right? There's 7 different elements into this.
Right.
And I would be having to grab all 7
and measure them out.
Right. Put them in. Hopefully I didn't, accidentally put sugar instead of salt. No kidding. But this is a system. I grab, I pour, I'm done.
And that's how we started doing it, really.
Yes, it's how we started our seasonings.
Because we wanted a system for our own pantry. And we're like, man, if we make tons of that Italian seasoning up ahead of time, we're always using it.
Yeah.
And now it's available for you.
Yeah, so you can head over to our website, heritagehomefamilyfarm.com. Also on YouTube, we are committed to showing you step by step how to use these spice mixes to bring delicious food to your table. When you order, also, you get recipe cards.
Yep.
And then if you do follow us on Instagram at Heritage Home Family Farm or on Facebook at Heritage Home Fam Farm, then you can also see us cooking in our kitchen on the regular.
All the time.
Also, sorts of ideas. People tag us all the time and we get to share what they're doing, which inspires us.
Yeah.
It's really fun.
Yeah.
I really like it.
Really, really great. So, like, subscribe, follow along. And we hope, as always, that this is just encouraging to you, that it challenges you to think a little differently. Maybe get out there and get started doing something that you've maybe always dreamed of doing. So we will see you next time.
See ya.